So, Yolonda Ross, you are one of the stars of Showtime's new series, The Chi, which is a deep dive look into the lives of several residents in the South Side of Chicago. It's a tongue twister. Um, so, when you first read this script by creator Lena Waithe, uh, what about it spoke to you? What made you want to lend your acting talents to this show?
Well, I mean, it was well written. You know, that was the biggest thing. The characters made sense, the settings made sense, and that it was speaking for Chicago in a positive way. You know, I mean, there's crime, there's all kinds of things that happen in all cities, but you know, Chicago really has gotten a bad rap, and that she was making it humane. You know, making characters and situations personal, so that people could get how some of these things actually can happen that you hear on the news, and just see what the steps were that led to that. I thought it was really powerful.
Well, like you say, I mean, Chicago is often a city that it's the first thing that's brought up whenever somebody wants to talk about crime in America and use it as like a litmus test for, well, see, that's how things are, right? But one of the great things this show does is that it humanizes, it gives face to the people who actually live there.
Yeah.
And it creates a lot of empathy for those characters. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, that's more or less like what I was saying before. It does, you know, bring empathy to the characters, to the people that actually live in these areas, so that you're not just thinking, oh, all Black people on the South Side shoot each other. That's all we do. You know, it shows how, you know, one thing can happen that then leads to another. Then there is, you know, things escalate. But in this case, it's also showing you that people are just living. You know, people that live in the South Side of Chicago are no different than people that live in Beverly Hills. You got bills to pay, you got kids, you have, you know, jobs. Maybe Beverly Hills people have jobs, but you know, it's just like people are just living day to day and trying to keep a happy home.
It's one of the great qualities of art, that you're able to walk in another person's shoes and understand them better. So tell us a bit about your character, Jada Washington. Tell us a little bit about who she is.
Well, Jada is she's a caretaker. She's a nurse. She takes care of an elderly woman named Ethel. And she also has a son who is in his late teens, early 20s, I would say. And he is a young Black man. And that's a lot in itself these days, to raise up and make sure that they keep living day to day, because you never know what can happen once they leave the house. And in his case, he's a young man with 3 kids, and her role as a single mother is really to guide him, you know, not preach to him. My feeling in what Jada does is not a preacher, but a mother that I feel is like a lot of mothers these days that are doing it alone. You know, you and your child or children become a unit, you know, and in this case, they're kind of brother and sister, they're kind of roommates, they're definitely mother and son, but she's trying to guide him so that he makes the right decisions along the way. And I think in this first year, you see how Emmett grows. You see how he takes more responsibility.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned some things about her, but I wonder, when you first read the script, I mean, what were little traits about her personally that jumped out to you? And then what were some things that you developed about her as the season went along?
With Jada, it was so funny when doing the audition scenes, which were literally the ones in the first episode, she just made sense to me. Like, when you can say dialogue without really having to remember it, it just rolls off the tongue. That's like amazing writing. And that is somebody that you respond to, that you know. I feel like out of all the characters I've ever played, Jada's probably the most like me. I feel she's a common sense, you know, type of thinker, common sense type of liver. And she just, and she's compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
I feel she's compassionate.
You mentioned the relationship with her son, and I want to just ask you. I mean, working with Jacob Lattimore, the actor who plays Emmett, can you talk a bit about what that dynamic is like between the two of you? How you're able to capture that mother-son dynamic?
We hung out some, as we were filming, and a little bit before. But with Jacob, because he's the only person that I'm really in scenes with a lot, besides Ethel, we just kind of got this banter, between us, and we carry it off stage too, which is really funny because we've been doing press together a lot, and we end up being kind of like mother and son when we're hanging out. He's easy to get along with. It's easy to work with him, talk with him, go over things, work things out between us. He's easy, and he's a great actor.
You mentioned Ethel, and I wanted to ask you about that as well, because it's such a wonderful insight into your character that she has chosen to make a living caring for other people. And I mean, you really see that not just in her professional life, but also in her personal life. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, working with LaDonna, who plays Ethel, I thought that was a really great character to write and put into story, because I don't think a lot of times with TV, we think of kids all the time. We think of youth. The elderly are a real part of our world that get neglected. They definitely get neglected on television. And in this case, seeing how a Black family deals with things, not to say that we're hugely different from white people, but just seeing how we care for our own. We do care for it. And things aren't always as easy. You might not have that health insurance or life insurance or be able to pay for that home aid and have to figure that out. All of those different things. And in this case, Ronnie, who's her grandson, who's supposedly supposed to be taking care of her, has not really been doing it. And she steps in because it's her job, but also she does feel for this woman, and they do become friends, because Jada herself does not really, as far as I've seen, doesn't have a lot of outer, fun to say.
Well, it also is, it speaks to one of the great qualities of the show as well. Like you mentioned, the elderly often get neglected in shows, and this is a series that is about multiple generations.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and you see the ways in which the older generation influences the younger generation, which influences the next generation. Can you talk a bit more about that dynamic in the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing with how she's done that, because the multiple generations within the show, I do feel show how we do care for each other and how we do pass things along, whether they're positive or negative, or whether a home that's made up of a mother, a stepfather, and that kind of situation, and how we deal with things. I just think it shows a realistic view of what life really is like. This just happens to be more Black people in it than others, but it shows that we are diverse in many ways. Even with having the two moms on the show for the character of Kevin, I think that's amazing that she showed all this. And the best part of it is that this is just how it is. It's not that the whole show makes a point of this or that thing, or that this is happening. It's matter of fact, which is how life is.
You guys shoot a lot of this in Chicago, and I believe you're talking to us right now from Chicago.
Yeah, Chi-town, I'm here.
Talk a bit about shooting in Chicago. I mean, what is the special quality that city has that lends itself so well to television?
Well, I mean, there's everything here. And in this case, since the show is about Chicago, I mean, we have the star right here. We are in the city. We are in the city with the people that live here. So if anything is going to be done wrong, they're going to check us, and make sure that we're doing it right or saying it right. And that goes for Lena and Common as well, because they're from Chicago. And a lot of our writers, are Chicago based. So I just feel like it's a great character in itself. And to be able to watch a show and see your neighborhood spot, on the show that is not some massive or major, restaurant or whatever, it's the spot you go to on a regular. I think that's pretty hot.
You mentioned Lena Waithe, and obviously she's a great multi-hyphenate.
Multi, and I'm sure there's probably more to come.
What can you talk a bit about working with her as the creator, and I mean, what did she help give you that gave added insight into this character and into this story?
Well, she was always open with us, and she just, her door was always open. Her phone is always there for you if you had questions. I feel the thing that she did, like, she talked about the city. She talked about people that, like certain characters are kind of like she pulled from, so you could understand where she's coming from with them. And also, she lets you find it yourself as an actor. And I think that's really important because, not that we're ever playing real people, but when you're acting in something that somebody's written, that they're pulling from certain things or people and that kind of situation, it can sometimes be like, you almost want to mimic who they are. But in this case, that's not that at all. It's like she lets us act. Mm-hmm. And that's important.
And there's also a great team of directors as well that has worked on this show. Can you talk about what they give you?
Oh, they're there for the ride too. I mean, everybody was really excited to be on this year, and and I can only imagine next year. But it was really nice to work with a lot of women directors, and it's always cool with TV that you have different directors doing the episodes. So everybody's got a different take, and that in itself just kind of keeps it alive and interesting.
This show is a part of a really great wave that we've seen in television and films, where we've seen more diverse stories being told. I mean, can you talk a bit about the significance of that and the fact that these shows and these films are successful? I mean, what does that say for you?
I feel that this whole movement right now, it's saying and doing a lot, because women, people of color, all people of color are being heard at this moment. I hope it stays, and I do feel it will stay. But I feel what it's doing is it's showing the world, who we are, because it's one thing to have a show where you then have like usually a white male writing it, a white male team putting it out, to have the voice actually be authentic from the person or the type of people that the show is about, I think says a lot, because there's little things that we just know and feel that just come through. And when you actually read them on a page and then see it, you're like, oh yeah, like that little thing, so it's just like, I feel it boosts us because we see ourselves, like really see ourselves, and that the industry at this point is seeing that we look out for us. We have something to say and we support, like with Black Panther, like with everything Lena's doing, it's overwhelming, which is great, because I just hope it shows them that there's a lot of voices to us. There's a lot of types of us. We're not just one note, so it's not just the funny Black person or the angry Black person. It's like we're multifaceted, just like everybody else. And for us to be able to see ourselves in that way is very important.
And there's certainly an audience for it as well. Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to ask you, you've had a long and full career. You've even got a couple of you've not that long. I mean, but you've got a couple of Independent Spirit nominations to your credit for some films, Go for Sisters and Stranger Inside. I wanted to ask what that recognition meant for you.
It meant the world to me, because I mean, Stranger Inside was my first film, and at that point to realize that you have found what it is you're put here for, you know, to tell these stories. To me, you know, for me, it's to showcase characters that I feel are not being seen, you know, not given the light. So if I can bring those characters to life, that I'm there, you know, and Jada is one of those. Being validated, I would say, by that specific area, independent film watchers, goers, filmmakers, that is where my heart is. Independent film, stories about diverse, you know, cities, situations, just diversity overall. It's just important to me because I feel that's how we get to understand each other.
You mentioned season 2, and the show has been picked up. Yeah. Do you have any indication of what to expect yet? Have you read any scripts? Or?
I don't have any indication. I hope Jada stays in Chicago. You know, I just, you know, from what I've been hearing from Lena, women are going to have a lot to do this season, which is it's very exciting to see what's going to happen. But I don't know anything, nada.
Well, I'll certainly look out for it.
Tell me if you hear something.
All right. Yeah, I'll let you know. Yolonda Ross, thank you so much. Congratulations on the show. It's fantastic, and appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good one.